We don't think about light every day. Light is practically invisible to us. But what if we could control it? For a long time, I have participated in game jams to test myself and to see how far I could go. But it does not always lead to a finished project that I am proud of. This time, I want to actively build something better. Can I make a game that not just other people would like to play, but a game that I would like? This is the post-mortem of my Acerola Game Jam project, Lightweaver. I invited some friends to get some pizza, do homework, and wait for the theme to be announced. That way, I could talk to them and bounce ideas around. Even though I wanted to make a game that I was proud of, I still wanted it to be interesting for other people. With that in mind, I was able to get them together to see the theme announcement. The theme ended up being aberration, which was a really interesting idea because it could mean a whole list of things. We then started to look through all of the different meanings of aberration, and we started by looking at Wikipedia, and looking at all of the different meanings and the different ideas behind it, it looked like using light was probably the best option. And that is exactly when the idea took form. What if I could bend light as a game mechanic? We could use all of the basic ideas like mirrors or prisms or all of those different things that make light do all of the things that light does. And after I got back home, I decided to immediately make a project. And while it may not be perfect, I wanted to try and at least get something working with a beam or a light thing, something that I can use as the basis for the rest of the game. So what kind of options do I have? Well, I could use a literal beam of light, or I can kind of cheat and use bullets of light. But I don't think that's kind of how I want to go. I want to go with the beam of light and bend a whole beam around something. With my game mechanics decided, I decided to go straight for making this tutorial level type situation that kind of looked good. I wanted this to be a polished game. Unlike my previous projects, I want this to actually kind of be good. And when I spent too much time on it, I went straight into making a beam of light. But how do you actually do that? One way to do this is to use a model and then make a bunch of different sections and sort of like glue them together as you shoot. This has the advantage of being able to like predetermine what angles you want to shoot at, or being able to have the flexibility to know how many triangles you're rendering. The problem is, how do you even control that? How would you even make that in a game jam? I have 14 days, but that doesn't mean I have to choose something that's impossible to code in that time. I want to choose something a little bit more simple, something that's built into Unity. There are packages on the Unity store, or even just in the package manager, like Pro Builder, in which you can make your own geometry kind of inside of Unity, but that feels a little bit more expensive than I'm trying to do. So I need a cheaper method, something that's more 2D than 3D. And that is when I discovered the holy grail of all things, Unity's line renderer. This hidden gem will let you connect two dots, and then you can change the material of it. And you can change all of these different positions and values during the game. The best part about it is that we can have more than just 2 points. We can just add as many as we want, and it will dynamically update as we go. I started by putting together a couple of scripts, and first look, it kind of works. Ignoring the fact that I didn't set it up fully correctly, it does work. It is moving in a direction, and I can shoot it. The problem is it's not really following the player if I move. It's like not tracking it. So maybe I have to find a different method. Over the next few hours, I tried to change it up a bit, but all I really got was this webbing from 0, It never really followed the player. It was more like it was following the center of the world. So let's go to plan B. Let's try and shoot bullets of light, and that way we don't really have to follow the player when we shoot. We can just spawn it and run away. With some slight modification to the code, I was able to make something a little bit different. Instead of straight up beams or bullets, we can have this sort of in-between small light ray. They're a little hard to control, but you can change the width and they'll actually interact with the world. But it still didn't really feel right. Having the length and width change when you shoot doesn't really make too much sense, and I can't really figure out a reason why to do this in the game. So, let's just go full-on bullet mode and make just small bullets that are the same length. They can still curve, because they're line renderers still, but they're going to act more like a sphere bullet they would use in a normal game. Over the next couple days, I banged my head against the problem, and I finally had bullets that did what I wanted them to do. They were 1 unit long, they were able to do the things they did before, just shorter. With my light beams out of the way, it was time to make these things actually do something. And that's where this beauty comes in. This is my design doc that I used over the first few days while building the light beam. Basically, it demonstrates everything I want this game to be, the art style, and all of the mechanics that I would like to include. And the first major one is the prism. Basically, just like normal prisms, I want to be able to split white light into the rainbow. But for simplicity, I'm just going to use R, G, and B. This could be seen as the limitation of aberration for chromatic aberration, but it's a bit of a stretch, and I want to try and solve that a different way later. But for now, this would fulfill my contractual obligation to fulfill the theme's requirements. In Unity, I implemented this by basically saying, if the light beam hits it, split it into 3 new beams of light. I tagged them slightly differently so they won't go into this infinite recursion loop, and it worked. It worked really well, actually. It took a little bit of tweaking to get the angles right, but nothing a couple minutes could solve, and it just works. What's this? A mechanic I haven't explained yet? Well, let's do it. This is the black hole. This is actually the first thing I made, and I made some particle systems around it. But basically all it does is if a light beam gets too close, it'll change its position to get a little closer, and kind of act like gravity. This is just meant to be basically a way to move the light in a way, and it isn't really that hard. There's only 3 lines of code with it. But moving on, the next thing we need to look at is the mirrors. While the black holes can let us bend the light in a more dynamic way, we want the mirrors to do it precisely. That way we can have the player solve puzzles that require the light to go in specific places. I want the game to be more like Portal than like Ghostbusters. With all of my major components in the game, I wanted to make a complete makeover so that way I could make it look good. With some research, I was able to find out that you can render things on their back face, which means that if you have 2 cubes and you set one to render behind, you can make this easy outline effect. And I abused the heck out of this. I used it for a skybox, I used it for an outline, I used it for just different things in general, and it really spiced up how the thing looked. Separately, I made these gradients in Illustrator that I used on materials and on the background to give it this nice sort of varied effect while not being too hard or complicated to actually make because I'm very lazy. And it really pulled stuff together. This was starting to look like a game. And now it was really time to start making some puzzles. And that's actually a really good point. How the heck is this a game? How do you win? How do you lose? Is there anything that's actually interesting here? And to solve that drought of uneasiness, I would like to add the functionality for the targets. The idea here is that if you can get the right combination, you can get on to the next level. So, through different puzzles and combinations, you would need to move the light around or split the light in different ways, so that way the player can somehow get red to this target. With all of this working, I decided to wait until the next day to start putting together the whole game and start designing levels for real. Today is March 3rd, Sunday. We're 5 days into the jam, and we're actually a lot farther than I thought I was going to be. So today, since I'm heading into, not work, but just coffee shop stuff, The goal is going to be, I want to be able to show off a level by the end of today and be like, yes, that's my game. I'm a little worried, but we got some of the control stuff done. We have the light beam done. We've got targets and we've got puzzles. I think it's just building it, putting it together, and seeing how it goes. So, yar. With the light beam finished, the first order of business was to actually try and fulfill the aberration part of the game jam. I do have this chromatic aberration kind of light splitting effect, but I didn't feel like that was enough. So I want a ghost aberration that might be able to help the player through the game. This can be kind of like a fairy from Spyro or another kind of helpful character to help the player, well, solve the puzzles. After a few hours in the coffee shop, this is what I had. I used the aberration model for both the aberration and the player, and I had the prism, the black hole, the target, and the mirror all in-game. I think this has no right to be as good as it is. I took a lot of off time, to be honest. I also spent way too much time on it at the same time. We had some exams. I had an exam today on physics. Calc-based physics. Why? But ultimately, my next week is free. I have school, sure, I have some stuff I gotta plan, but ultimately everything is open. And tomorrow is my first full day just working on the jam, and that's gonna be Thursday, the 7th. So that's kind of crazy, to be honest with you. With my halfway checkup done, I decided to reevaluate how I wanted to build levels in the first place. Everything looked really good, but now I need to actually design levels, not just sit around and shoot light beams around. There needs to be like a goal. So the first thing I did, of course, is to add explosions when the light beams hit something. I need more polish, it needs to look good. I really have an addiction to this stuff, it's a problem. But after all of this procrastination, it was finally time to mock up some levels. And I started by just creating 3 or 4 levels and laying out bases like this, where I can actually change each of the level's models. And that way every level feels unique, but also sort of is really easy for me to prototype and change if I need to. Separately, I decided to also finally make the targets work. And with all of that, I ended up going down this huge rabbit hole, because Thursday, I really didn't have anything to do. So I spent hours and hours and hours just working on different little things, from camera shake to targets to sound effects, and it got a little out of hand. Earlier update than I thought. So, sound's done. Okay. I made a new explosion effect, I added another sound, and it's good. It's really good. It's really good. This is really good. It's getting scary. All right. What was I gonna say? I was gonna say something important. Right. Okay. So I just did that, and I have a concern about performance. My laptop's running fine, and when I unplug it, it's running fine. But the problem is that my laptop might be just too good, in that it may be just chugging through all of this. Right now, before I move on to level design, because I'm going to do that like now, that's what we're going to move on to now, I want to build this, put it on itch again, and I want to playtest it on one of these Chromebooks. And if I can get that to run at a reasonable frame rate, if it feels good, if I know it's working, then I will invest time into level design, because that basically tells me that the game's going to run fine. If it can run on a Chromebook, it can run on a GPU. It can run on a gaming computer. That's my whole point. If I can do it, we're good. And then we might work on animations, but I think I really do want to block in levels. We're prefabbed now, meaning that all of the objects are prefabs, and I can just drag and drop them, and they all interact with each other. So I could have 14 prisms, and I have no extra code, and it will just work. Which is great. So, right, let me build, put it on a Chromebook, and I'll be right there. So it's running on WebGL now, but I want to see it on my actual Chromebook here and see what happens. Because I honestly don't know how well this is going to run or not. Volume. No. No, wait, does that mean this thing's just fine? That's cool. I then went ahead and designed the first level. I modeled up some basic trees and a little bit of a waterfall, and I just kind of spread out different things and objects around to make it really look like it's meant to be a world. And together, it really worked. It feels like it's supposed to be a real game. And I even had the first puzzle set up, where the player would have to get 3 targets in RGB order. With the game really close to completion, I decided to just go forward and make a bunch of different levels in different environments, changing out the background and changing out the assets to make it more realistic. For this level, I made a fire level, where you would have to move targets in a circle in order to hit all of them correctly. Other objects like this in different scenes made it feel like there was more content than was actually really there, and I'm so happy that this worked. And putting it all together, I had some decent environments to work with. I then added in some hints to each of the levels, so that way if the player got lost, they may be able to decipher how they're supposed to solve it. And that way, there's at least a little bit of a hint of how to solve a puzzle if you get stuck. With the end of the jam fast approaching, I had to scrap some extra levels that were really interesting to play with, but they didn't really finish in time, like this particle accelerator level, where you're meant to make a really big beam of light, but I just didn't even have the time. I haven't even worked on the aberration, like hint giver. It just never happened. With my time running out, I decided to just push everything I could out the door. I organized the levels, I put everything together, and I decided to let my friends playtest it just to make sure there's nothing I'm completely missing.
Anymore.
Please mess it up.
Actually, I don't want to see it.
Yeah, you want to be surprised? All right.
Oh,
My playtesters.
no spoilers.
Yeah.
Skipping IKEA and skipping.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Transition. Dang.
I don't know. I'm more casual.
Mm-hmm.
Light Weaver. Whatever.
Yeah. How does a mouse work?
Okay.
I'm gonna try not to help you because I don't want to be too hand-holdy.
Here we go. Here we go. Alright. Oh.
No, he's always one of those illusions.
Yeah.
That's a sound.
Yeah.
Do I need blue, green, and red?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
There you go.
Oh! Alright.
I can do this. No, this one is not happening.
You literally have 4. It's actually a problem.
No.
Student debt's got nothing on you. There you go, you did it. Yes.
What happens if I fall off?
Nothing, I don't think. I need to stop you from doing that, but that's okay. By the way, you can't fall. I believe I stopped gravity as well.
Oh?
I don't think you can. Try walking off. Yeah, you don't do anything. Yeah, nothing happens. Yeah. We're just gonna make the trees burn. Yeah, maybe that's what people want to do.
I love the
What? How are you not hitting that? Okay.
Oh, you want to do it that way. Interesting. Okay. After fixing minor things from the playtest, I decided to just go for it and start making sure everything was up on itch and making sure my project and its code was all on GitHub. That way, at a worst case scenario, I could just submit the project and go do school stuff. So, it's getting pretty close. There's only about a day left, and I want to try and just get everything polished up for the final release. Some of those final steps included making my main menu a little bit better and adding that kind of sound effects and all that cool stuff. It also included me making my own soundtrack, and in reality that was only one song on repeat, but it was something, and it did change how everything felt. And once everything was completed, it was time to start cleaning up, uploading, and submitting the project. I cleaned up my desktop, and I made my final commit to GitHub and uploaded the project to itch, claiming the sweet, sweet reward of sleep. Over the next couple of days, I played some other people's games, but people played my game. And most of the reviews were actually fairly positive and really had just some good constructive feedback. And while I wish I was able to do more with the whole concept in general, I feel pretty good about this. Now I just have to make the next one better. Well, mostly.